Timmy Joe reviews anything.
Reviewing computer parts on YouTube.
That's fun.
Gotta be pumped on that, right, Will? Computer parts! Woo!
Oh, yeah.
What's going on, people? My name's Timmy Joe. Where's the computer? I make videos about them, but I can't see, well, I see a video card. Oh, maybe something. Wait, is it over here? It's really hard to see it, isn't it? Ha! It's an ITX board. It's a really cool one. Here, check it out. Z87. Make videos about computers on the internet, and I found one. We're going to talk about it today. It's going to be fun. We're going to shift the old gears from, what's this, Ryzen or Radeon, or we're going to shift the gears and we're going to talk about something different because I don't have the anniversary edition to test because I had to send it back this morning, and there's a whole debacle behind that. Follow me on Twitter, watch Timmy Joe if you care about that. So, of course, we still have to talk about AMD because they are an amazing company for doing certain things, like making 6 and 8 core processors the mainstream with SMT or hyper-threading, lowering the prices, bringing the cost of those way down, and in their 3rd generation of Ryzen in 3 years, right? That's crazy. Like, pretty much 3 years, they've basically caught up with Intel and forced Intel to bring their core counts up and forced all the prices down. It's amazing. So, if you want to go back in, 5 years or so and talk, Core i7 4770, something like that, those were very expensive even up until like recently. Like to get an i7, a quad core with hyper-threading CPU, you were still looking at stupid prices used. People just think they're gold. They think the quad core with hyper-threading is gold. And now that Ryzen 3000 is out, I really think that that's going to start trickling down. And I've even seen it in my hometown with this awesome little build I picked up. So I've been looking for an ITX motherboard for a while, and I was thinking of doing it Ryzen, and you know what? We're going to do it this way because I got this on a really cool deal, and let's talk about it. So Z87i Deluxe, look at this motherboard. It is so cool. It has a power delivery on it that's its own little daughter board, and it's got Wi-Fi. It's got a lot of things you're going to need. It doesn't have M.2, but that's not a big deal. And what I want to do is make a small form factor case with these parts. I've got and this whole thing came with some RAM that we'll talk about in just a second. And we're going to make a little gaming PC that's as small as possible, and I'm going to make the case. I've actually gone as far as to buy a sheet metal brake from Princess Auto, or I think you guys in the States call it Harbor Freight. Like a big long thing that bends metal so we can bend it at proper angles to make a cool computer case from scratch. I've wanted to do this for a long time, and I actually finally bought the sheet metal and the sheet metal brake. We're going to start a project, and I'm going to do a mini ITX build. I was thinking of putting something like this in another console or something like that. They got a lot of views to put it in an Xbox, but then I put it in another Xbox and it didn't get quite as many views. If I do it again, it's overplayed. Even Linus stole the idea and already did it himself. But so I was going to put it in a PS3. I actually bought one. I don't know. If you want to see that, let me know. So this is going to be a high-end gaming system, but it's only going to have a quad core with hyper-threading, which is still pretty relevant these days. 8 threads can game, especially with the IPC that's on this, as we'll see in a second, or at least with the scores and the Cinebench and stuff like that. You're going to see it's able to facilitate a pretty high-end graphics card and still get the max performance out of it. So I got this thing you had it online for like way over $400 like 2 months ago, and I kept beating them up for pricing and saying, if you would only come down to this. I was thinking I brought them down to $360 at one point, or and I wanted him to go to $340. And then a month later, and Ryzen's come out, and he has this 4770K, this motherboard, and what turned out to be some extremely awesome DDR3 RAM. I got it for 300 Canadian, so for what, 240 American? That's a pretty good deal, I think, because if I was to buy all the ITX parts, for a Ryzen 2600 or something like that, or one of the newer chips, to get the IPC of this thing, then, it would probably come up there, especially with some good RAM. 2666, check that out. It's Team Group Extreme Memory. It's like some crazy fast, and it just boots at the XMP. DDR3 2666, that's pretty crazy. And then this thing has a 12-phase VRM, which I'm sure is just a 6 doubled phase, which is why it's so damn hot. There's a little daughter board that comes off of it. Pretty cool stuff. So yeah, we're going to play around with this today because 4770K needs a delid. And I'm not finding a good cooler for it in this case I'm going to build. This is like the first in a series. It's getting the parts sorted out. I haven't decided what GPU I want to put in there. I've been looking for a 1070 Ti or a 1080 Mini. If anyone out there has like a mini graphics card that's powerful above a 1070 and they're looking to get rid of it, or a good price or something like that, let me know, because I've been trying to grab one on eBay for a certain price point that I've got. Or I might just incorporate, because I can build the case however I want. Maybe I'll just incorporate, for one of the graphics cards I have, because even though it's big, and we'll figure it out. I don't know, 5700 in it or something like that. That might be cool. So we're going to delid this thing today. I've got it at 4.7 gigahertz. I didn't know, because at the time I wasn't really into this high a processor. I was more budget. That back 5 years ago when this thing came out, it was a pretty good IPC improvement, IPC improvement specifically, over Sandy Bridge and Ivy Bridge. But the frequencies were all over the map when this thing launched. 4770K. You could get one that only did 4.5 gigahertz at like 1.4 volts. You could get one that did 5 gigahertz at 1.3 volts. There was a huge variation in the binning, and it got a little bit changed up when they released the refresh of Devil's Canyon, which was just the same exact CPU with a little bit better binning by the time they had produced enough of the chips, 4790K. But if you look at, this is the heatsink he had on this, definitely never overclocked it or anything, so I've got like kind of a virgin chip. The thermal paste on the heatsink was like cement. So I bet it was getting pretty damn toasty even at stock levels with this craptastic cooler. And the thermal paste underneath the IHS has got to be pretty dang terrible. So we're going to go ahead and take it apart today. We're going to delid it. We're going to put some normal thermal paste on it because I don't think I have any liquid metal. And we're going to see if we can up the overclock, because I'm at 4.7 gigahertz right now. If you want to go over here and check out, we're at, I was playing with the base clock and stuff like that, but you see I've got a 47 multiplier, and I've got to be with that air cooler on there at 1.39 volts, man. It was more like 1.38. All right, so we're in Windows, and I was disappointed with the frequency I was getting on this, because I was assuming 4770, good motherboard, you should be able to get 4.8 gigahertz, and I'm not able to achieve that right now, at least with this cooler. You might say, well, that cooler's just not good enough. Well, I bring you this, okay? Watch this. Bring over to that's a Sandy Bridge 2600K, okay, on Q87 or Q67 motherboard. I'm sorry, that I had on the test bench the other day. It was a system I bought for real cheap, and I actually wound up turning it around too fast to do a video on it. But here we go. Check this out. I'm at 5 gigahertz. 5 gigahertz. I believe I'm at really high voltage, 1.5 volts. But I was able to achieve 1.5 gigahertz with that air cooler. Now, Sandy Bridge, as far as I remember, is soldered, so that's probably a big help. But I got 858 in Cinebench, and I was at 5 gigahertz on an air cooler. I was ecstatic with that CPU. Now, of course, Haswell is a bit better. As we'll see here, I will run Cinebench, and hopefully it doesn't crash. There we see 72 on one core and 91 on the hottest core. That is a way too big a variation. We need to fix that, that's for sure. We're going to put a water cooler on it. We're going to delid it and see if we can take it a little further. See, 930. So, if you even get into like a 7700K, it will max out at 1100. So, let's say you can get it to 5 gigahertz, and that's at 5.3 gigahertz or something stupid like that. So there was marginal increases, like ticks and ticks instead of talks and ticks and talks for all of these i7 quad cores. Like minimal, increases over the span of like 8 years. It was pretty silly. Between the 2600 and the 7700K, there was like maybe a 25% IPC improvement. Like, that's not very great, but Ryzen took until very recently to even catch up. Because 1500X will do maybe 850 in Cinebench at its max overclock. So, that's only reaching Sandy Bridge levels of, at 5 gigahertz, mind you, of performance. So let's head into the garage and we'll do a little delidding after I take this thing off the bench, and we'll see just how low the temps can go with a water cooler and frequencies, the height of frequencies. See you soon. So this is what thermal interface looks like on a 5-year-old CPU that's probably been well used. I can't pick it with this razor blade very easily. It's cracking. Like, how do you justify sending out a CPU where the thermal interface is like caked on, like it's terrible. Such a bad interface. So we're gonna go ahead and get that cleaned up and get her pre-applied, and hope I didn't break the CPU, because you see it just dangles there. Because yeah, I had to put some good force on it in that vise. These 4770s are probably the last area you really should use the vise technique on, and I don't imagine you should be. So let's go ahead and get her figured out. Alright, we see here 5700 AIO, a few changes have been made, but what's going on? Smash that down, there we go. We have come to the conclusion that although temperatures have severely decreased, 4.7 gigahertz is this chip's limitation, which is I'm sure something some people of the era might understand. It's very sad when you hear, there are chips out there that get 4.8, 5 gigahertz, and then you're stuck at 4.7. At least it's not 4.6, which was the thing that happened. So we'll go ahead here. I'll run Cinebench. Just check out this top core here. It's going to jump up to 75 degrees-ish. Before it was getting 91. And with the air cooler, it actually was around the 75 mark, if that. So the AIO didn't do that much for temperatures. If you heated up the AIO for a bit, it would probably actually equal the Noctua NH-U12A. So pretty dang cool stuff. But yeah, 4.7 gigahertz maxed out. I have the really fast RAM in there, 2666 CL, 11, 13, 13, 36. And it's running at XMP profile, and yeah, it's all good. It's not too loud or anything as it runs, but I was sad I couldn't get any higher than that. I'm sure those of you of the era, it'll do with everything closed, like 940 in Cinebench, something like that. But as we see, the temperatures, the core the package reached 82. But what worries me is this 108 degree main board, 100 degrees. So I even have a damn fan pointing at the main board, and it's still like that. So all said and done, 4770, you might get a good one and get 4.8 or maybe even 5 gigahertz. You might get a bad one, but at 4.7, I actually decreased the voltage down, the stock volt, like the main voltage, down to 1.36, sorry, 1.36, with an LLC set to 7 out of 8. And that way, when we do the heavy load, it bumps it up there, so there's no V droop. But it's able to keep that lower voltage. But I can't even go 1.4, 1.45. Probably something to do with the motherboard being, pretty warm, that VRM. It might not be designed for this. Maybe on another motherboard you could get 4.8 gigahertz with this. I don't know if it's a limitation with how much voltage needs to be pumped in there. But when it's all said and done, the moral of the story is 4.7 gigahertz nets you 950 in Cinebench, absolute max. Maybe a 5 gigahertz CPU could do a little bit better. So, since I titled the name of this video 4770 in 2019 or something along those lines, you probably want to know how this games, and I did too, because if I'm going to put this into some super high-end gaming mini system that I'm going to build, I want to know that this 4770 is still worth using. And yeah, for sure, especially like tech deals, for as methodical and kind of nerdy as he is, just did a very good video where he compared the 2600K all the way up to like a modern i7. So there was he shows all the variants with a 2080 Ti though. Now, how many of you out there are using an older CPU with a 2080 Ti? Probably not. So if you're even considering a 4770, you're probably not going with much better than like a 1070 or a Vega 56, or well, in my case I got a 5700 on here, and I did some comparative benchmarks. I'll throw them up on the screen here real quick, and essentially this thing will match-ish the performance with this graphics card. to my 7820X, which is an 8-core, 4.8 gigahertz CPU that's got a little bit better IPC. Now, there is some variance, but this is a very real-world scenario where Tech Deals is using a 2080 and he might be showing 1080p performance and then 4K performance. I'm showing you 1440p, the middle of the road. You know, if you have one of these graphics cards, probably the max resolution you're going to be running at because you want to get good frame rates. And if you want to go down to 1080p, it'll probably, the gap will open up a little bit more, but essentially 10% in somewhere around there for the performance difference between an 8-core more modern CPU and a 4770 that's only, you know, 4 cores, 8 threads. You know, games are taking advantage of more cores these days, but with the 8 threads, it's still a viable CPU. I don't suggest anyone go with just a 6-core like 9600K. I've made that abundantly clear. I think that's a silly CPU. You know, you could max out a lot of games, but in the coming years, 6 cores isn't going to be enough, which is pretty crazy. But at the resolutions we're talking here with this graphics card, I'm completely satisfied using it in a high-end build. Now let's talk about the build. Since the performance is there, I might use that 5700, but if anyone out there can get me a good deal on a mini, a smaller 2060, 1070 Ti, you know, something like that, I would be well open to purchase this from you because I want to get something small. I actually even saw yesterday, I'm going to try and get it like 1080 that's actually from an Aorus eGPU that's like really tiny and engineered to be in this little tiny box to use with a laptop or something like that. And the guy's just selling the GPU, and I'm a little sketched out on it, but I could do something like that. But that's only if I'm going mega small. I have this idea, and I'll say Apex Legends would be the theme of doing an Apex Legends theme build of, you know, something around this big maybe. And we could fit all these components in there, I'm pretty sure, and still build it from scratch. So if you want to see kind of a themed build, let me know in the comments. Or if you want to just see me make the absolute smallest box or rectangular structure for these parts and maybe a smaller GPU, would you rather see that? I don't know. I'll take some suggestions. I have been taking some suggestions on Twitter. But when it's all said and done, we didn't get a lot accomplished except for we dropped like 20C on the, you know, the high-end core there and dialed in the overclock at 4.7 rather than it running hot and a little instability with slower RAM speeds and stuff like that. But I did not get accomplished what I was hoping. I was hoping to make this thing get super crazy speeds. If I was hoping to get 4.8 gigahertz minimum, we got 4.7. Good enough, I guess. But I'm out. Watch Timmy Joe on Instagram and Twitter. Look forward to an upcoming build featuring the motherboard you can barely even see. There we go. Down in there. And I'm literally going to make my own case out of sheet metal. And I'm thinking of an Apex Legends build. I love that game. I don't know how many of you guys out there are still playing it. It's a pretty sweet game. I'm thinking of a really cool, like, thing, if you can think of what I'm hinting at. So I'm out. Watching me on Instagram and Twitter. This has been a long enough video. I will see you guys in another video and all that good stuff. Look forward. I finally got confirmation that AMD received my my card today, so hopefully I'll have the anniversary edition review coming up very soon. Lots of stuff. I got a list a mile long of things to do. Let's get her done. See you guys later.